In this episode, we sit down with someone who found me the same way half of Trinidad seems to find each other, through a last name. We talk about what it's like to build a career from scratch in a new country, taking a step down to eventually go up, and why people who never met her were willing to bet on her before she'd proven anything. And we go straight into the question this series keeps coming back to: where are you from? This time, through the eyes of someone who's felt both its warmth and its sting on more than one continent. Welcome to Boosted, from unpolished to promoted. I'm Trina Booz, founder and CEO of Boost Academy of Excellence. As a former recruitment agency CEO who placed thousands of professionals, I now train emerging leaders on the workplace skills that actually get you promoted. In each episode, you'll get actionable tips to build your professional presence and advance your career through real workplace scenarios and human stories. We'll cover the unwritten rules of professional success that nobody teaches you in school. Are you ready to boost your professional game? Let's dive in. Today's guest is a communications specialist with over 15 years of experience in reputation management, crisis communications, and brand development, who immigrated to Canada from the Caribbean in 2018. She's built a career within the banking sector, moving from the contact centers to enterprise real estate and to private wealth, where she has led communications work while taking on leadership roles within the Black employee network at her current employer. Outside of work, she's a runner, a reader, and a volunteer with the TRIAC mentorship program. And she'll tell you without hesitation that she's Trinidadian first, always. Analisa Allen, welcome to Boosted.
Thanks for having me, Trina. Thank you.
So Analisa, you reached out to me a while ago on LinkedIn because you recognized my last name from Trinidad. So can you remind me how you're familiar with my family's name?
Yes, for sure. So I knew that name was not a very common name. And I remembered being a scared 10-year-old in a hospital room, sitting, waiting to have my appendix removed. And there was also another little girl in that room at the same time. And she had the same last name. And I thought to myself, this can't be a coincidence. You must be related. So I decided, you know what, let's give it a shot and reach out to see whether or not it was either you or someone you were related to.
It was really nice to connect on that front. I reached out to my cousin after as well, and she had a memory of back when she was a child. So very cool. It's funny about the islands how everyone seems just 1 degree away from everybody.
Yes, you've heard of 6 degrees of separation, but in the Caribbean, it's literally 1 or maybe a half degree of separation from each other. Yeah.
And then you find out you're related to one another, and then that's a whole other conversation, right?
Whole another conversation, but it's pretty interesting, and it's very heartwarming to know that we are all connected in different ways and in different spaces. So it keeps us pretty grounded, I would tend to think.
So tell me, take me back to when you actually left Trinidad. What brought you to Canada specifically?
Yeah, so in my LinkedIn profile, my statement or headline speaks to me being a communicator with global perspective. And so when I started looking around for new opportunities and needing a change, basically, I said, you know what? I can't claim to be a communicator with global perspective if I haven't moved outside of the Caribbean. So let's try a different area, different space. And we started looking, my family and I, that is, we started looking at different options. And in reality, after having visited Canada as a child a number of times and then visiting as an adult, we decided, okay, Canada is it. It fits. It's lovely. The folks are friendly, and the environment is welcoming and open for growth. So let's try Canada. And so, as they say, the rest is history, and here I am today.
Can you think of any specific culture shock moments from that first year that still make you giggle now?
Yes. Um, Folks talk about the weather a lot. So, something that sparks any conversation, that removes the silence from any room, any Teams meeting, any elevator, is that question about the weather. Are we enjoying the weather? The weather in Canada is so interesting that it warrants a good conversation. And I have never had folks just randomly ask me how I'm enjoying the weather. And that sticks with me to this day. And I think if there's one thing that I have adopted in being in Canada, is chatting about the weather. It's actually quite fun.
It's fun. It's a nice opener. What
It
makes you say it's
is.
fun?
It's fun because sometimes you see the reactions from folks when you speak about the weather. So, for example, these past couple of weeks have been what Native Canadians deem as being really hot. But to me, it's just pretty normal. I am as cool as a cucumber, basically, and I am out and about, and I'm not sweating, and I'm not dying of heat exhaustion because it's humid. And so sometimes you look at folks and their expressions are almost like flabbergasted that I could be enjoying this heat. And then there's the flip side when it becomes super cold and I am dying a slow death every day, from the layers to the freezing temperatures to the shoveling of snow and ice, that it becomes quite the banter.
So you and I were talking about your career and how it started here. So maybe you could
Yeah.
share that. Tell me about that job that changed everything for you when you came here. What was that story?
Yeah. So just to take a step back from that initial point, I had been at a job that I didn't quite love and it wasn't within my field. But I decided, you know what, I'm going to hold on to it and get some Canadian experience while I hunt for jobs within my field. And one day I saw a job posting at the bank, and I said, "Oh, I could do this job. This looks pretty similar to something that I've done before. Let me try out for it." There were elements of doubt that crept in. I was exhausted of trying and exhausted from sending out applications, but I said, why not? Let's try. And so I submitted my application, and interestingly, the hiring manager was also from the Caribbean, and she saw my resume. She saw the different levels of experience that I had had from my first job all the way up to being at a senior management level outside of Canada. And she said, "Okay, you know what? I'm gonna take a chance on this young lady and let her come and show what she can do." I think she also believed in me because she knows the type of education that we get in the Caribbean, and she recognized that in order for me to have risen through the ranks within the Caribbean,
Mhm.
I should be able to come here and do it as well. And she opened the door to me. Needless to say, I did go through a couple of interviews, and she called me and we had a good chat. And I showed her my work. I was able to position myself to excel. And she said, "Okay, I'm going to give you an opportunity." And that opened so many doors for me
Mhm.
here at the bank, opportunities to not just progress in my career, but also to support others who are on a similar path as I was and I am.
Was there a different moment where someone recognized your name specifically before you'd even met them?
That was a totally different job altogether. That was the job that took me out of the first job that I had here. Now, that hiring manager recognized my name from work I had done in another Caribbean island. So I used to work in Jamaica, and I worked there for a considerable amount of time, doing a number of projects across the island, but with a particular entity. And I had done a project with this hiring manager's organization when she worked in Jamaica. And she saw my name on the resume and she was like, but I think I know this person. And she called me in for the interview. I came into the office and interestingly, her accent switched. When I spoke to her on the phone, she sounded very Canadian. Like I swore she was born and raised here. But once got into the office and I began speaking with her, I'm like, this lady does not sound like the regular Canadian. So I said, um, I'm not sure, but you sound Jamaican. And she was like, yes, I'm from Jamaica. And that is when she explained that she knew my name and she was familiar with the quality of work that I had done in Jamaica. And as such, she felt, okay, you know what? I need to give Mrs. Allen a chance and let her get a foot in the door, because sometimes that's all we really need, right? A foot in the door, and then we can begin growing and expanding and excelling where we need to.
I think about this question, which we'll address later, but the where are you from? And some find it quite limiting. And for you, these stories you're sharing, it's been very beneficial for people to understand, because as you say, like there's a real, if you know the Caribbean education system, you know the quality, you know global companies, you know, you're going to have people that have incredible experience. And so if you understand that, those opportunities, when people see that, are going to be open to you for the right hiring manager. So you've been very lucky.
Yes, I agree. I think luck, and I oftentimes don't believe in the word luck. I look at it as more of a blessing, because if she didn't know my name or she didn't see the organization that I worked for previously, it may not have clicked in her head to probably consider me. But I'm forever grateful to her for giving me that opportunity to be able to take those stepping stones into where I am now.
And what do you think culturally you've experienced in the workplace here in Canada that's different to back home in how people connect and relate to one another?
Oh, wow. That's a really good question. And oftentimes when I think about it, I look at the differences in terms of one, maybe spontaneity. So back home, we can spontaneously on a Friday evening decide, well, okay, let's go for a lime. And by lime I mean socialize, not the fruit of the tree, of course. But you can go hang out, grab dinner, grab some drinks, and just relax and chill without having to schedule it way in advance. And I find that that's a considerable difference here, at least from my experience. Folks need to schedule things because they have lots and lots on the go, and it's really difficult sometimes, because let's say, for example, you had a rough day and you really could use the opportunity with a colleague or a peer to just like decompress. That's not as readily available as it is in Trinidad or even in any of the Caribbean islands, I would say. And then I think also one of the differences is that work here is very niche or nuanced. So you are either an internal communicator, to use my own profession, or you do external communications, or you do media relations, as opposed to in the Caribbean where you're a communicator. So you're doing all of that and then some. So it's very, very structured here, I find, as opposed to in the Caribbean.
So you mentioned previously that Trinidad almost has no religious lines. You had described that everyone celebrates everyone's holidays,
Yeah.
and you realized there was a moment where you realized that doesn't automatically carry over here in Canada. So can you share a little bit
Yeah.
about that?
Yeah, so Trinidad and Tobago is multicultural, it's multi-religious, and it's supremely diverse. And so, based on that, there's a mutual respect across all religions for their celebrations, their festivals. And I think that's reflected in our calendar, in our holiday calendar, because if it's Diwali, it's a public holiday. If it's Christmas, it's a public holiday. Corpus Christi, Eid al Fitr, you name it, it's a public holiday. And so everyone celebrates and acknowledges the respective holidays that occur within the religious groups. Coming to Canada, I recognize that there are also a number of religions that I either never heard of or don't know folks who belong to those religions. But I have found that given given the fact that we don't necessarily have the broken out observances for everyone to observe,
Hmm.
and by observe, I mean acknowledge the holiday in a way that we stop and we're able to reflect or celebrate with those groups. It takes away from the opportunity to learn about respective cultures. And for example, I don't particularly know anyone who might be Buddhist, for example, and they may have a holiday that comes up, and I don't know because I'm not exposed to it and it's not celebrated holistically across the nation.
Yes.
Yeah.
So let's go back to the keynote that I recently gave at CIBC, which,
Hmm.
if anyone hasn't heard it, you can find it in a previous episode, a couple episodes ago. And if you could walk me through what is a good version of what that question feels like for you when people ask you that, and I'm more talking in a professional setting.
Oftentimes, when I enter a boardroom or meeting room and I speak, people ask, or maybe they don't ask. It depends. Sometimes their facial expressions say it all. But it's really a case where folks are excited to know that I come with a different perspective, that the where I'm from brings openness of conversation, and it also allows new, fresh thoughts and perspectives. So if I happen to enter a room where people don't know me, for example, like I'm on a new project and I start to speak, you automatically see the head raise when I actually speak, especially if I am passionate about the topic or I'm excited about it. You hear the energy more, so that little melodic accent, it comes out more.
Mhm.
And people would be like, hmm, where are you from? I hear an accent. And I'd be like, well, I'm from Trinidad and Tobago. And they'd be like, oh, and then could you help us understand the perspective from your lens versus the lens that we have? And I feel very privileged to be able to bring that value to our conversation, because sometimes we oftentimes don't see what we don't see because we are so in the weeds of it. But when you can bring that external eye, that openness of viewpoint, I think it's remarkable. And I love to be able to say where I'm from, because after the work is over, people love to delve deeper into, so what is Trinidad like? Where exactly is it? And all of that good stuff. So from a professional standpoint, that creativity of thought and difference of opinion, I think, has proved to be a benefit to me in terms of that question and when it's asked. But of course, there are two sides to every coin, and when you think about it from the not so positive perspective. There have been instances where people have asked where I'm from, and it becomes oh well, you don't have the experience or the expertise needed because you're from the Caribbean, and so Caribbean versus North America, and then they tend to preface with developing, or it could be worse, where they say third world versus first world, which I really think is very antiquated at this point in time. But people do use those as the lines to draw whether or not I may be qualified or not to do my job, and that really does hurt because as we spoke of earlier, our education in the Caribbean is second to none, and we are highly, highly educated people who originate from the Caribbean. And of course, if given the opportunity or the chance to showcase and position ourselves, we do a fantastic job. So that's a little burner there, but it is what it is.
Yeah. Thank you for that.
Yeah, sure.
So I had the GRACE framework that I addressed in the talk too. It was sort of like a way to think about whether we ask, how to ask, when to ask, and also how to receive the
Mm-hmm.
question gracefully. So grace, so it was genuine curiosity. R, read the room. A, ask at the right time. C, come with humility. And E, engage with the answer. So which one of these resonates the most with you, and why?
Read the room. I think that one stands out most, mainly because sometimes a question is great and it's a good source of getting information. But if the energy in this space doesn't allow for it, instead of that question being a positive, it can very well be a negative, and then put this huge damper on any conversation, any atmosphere, any room. And it's it's very important that we read the room in every instance in life. But with this question in particular, yeah, I think it's critical because you really never know what's going on in the background of someone's mental space. Being mindful of triggering people is exceedingly important, and not that it overrides everything else within the grace framework, but I think it's highly, highly important that we consider the space that we're in, and the other nuances that may exist that we may not be fully aware of.
What would you say Canada has given you that you didn't quite expect?
Wow. Okay, that is a tremendous question. So I can look at that from two perspectives. I can look at it culturally and I can look at it professionally. So I'll start from the professional side. Um, Canada has given me that sense of work life balance in a way that I never ever thought possible. In my previous jobs outside of Canada, the balance was not quite there. I worked a lot, and don't get me wrong, I grew from those working times, but the opportunity to say, well, okay, it's summer, I can log off earlier. I can put in the hours at the front end of the day and then have the opportunity to decompress afterwards. And I think culturally, well, of course, there's the weather. I jokingly tell people that I love winter, but I love winter from the perspective of the clothing. Like, I love a good pair of boots, and I also love a good sweater. But if I'm to be serious, I think culturally, seeing people come together in spaces to really highlight their own cultures, even within the North American and Canadian culture, is is really, really heartwarming. Like, I see so many different festivals happening, like downtown, for example, downtown Toronto, that is. I see the festivals, I see the food, and oh gosh, I can't stop talking about the food and the fusion of the different foods, as well as the foods that are Canadian, like Canadian culture. So like I came here and someone offered me a beaver tail once, and I was like, uh, why exactly would I be eating the tail of this thing that looks like an oversized rat? So I thought it was a meat kind because, of course, in Trinidad and Tobago, we do eat wild meat. So I was like, no, until I realized it was like this pastry thing. And I love learning about the diversity that exists here. And I'm like, whoa, I'm totally blown away by Canada each and every day. And I'm truly, truly grateful for the opportunity to live here and work here.
That's a good answer. So tell me, what have you kept from home that you will never let go of?
Well, I mean, separate and apart from the accent, that doesn't seem to disappear. I would say my traditions in terms of a good Sunday lunch. I will cook my macaroni pie. I will do my stew chicken. I will do my potato salad, my callaloo, my carrot rice, everything. And a very carb intensive Sunday lunch is what I will hold on to. And I also hold on to the values that I grew up with, right? The being courteous and polite to people. I say good morning to folks, whether they choose to respond to me or not. I say good morning each and every time. I bring also the traditions from my family. You know, it's Christmas time. You get your pastels, you get your sorrel, and you have your cake, and you have that community type feeling. And of course, you know, I always have my Trinidad flag. It's interesting. I don't have one behind my head, but I usually keep my flag with me in some way, shape, or form, whether it's the actual flag or it's the key rings that I carry with my respective keys, with the copious amounts of keys that I have. I bring that with me, but I think through it all, in my heart and in my head, I always carry my country. I could see the map, the outline of the map in my head. If I close my eyes, I could see my neighborhood that I grew up in as a child, my church that I went to for my entire life. I see it when I close my eyes. Trinidad and Tobago is always, always with me. And I oftentimes reflect and I go through pictures. I have videos of my carnival experiences, videos on the beach and that kind of thing. And I bring Trinidad and Tobago with me everywhere.
All right, so a couple last questions. Calypso
Mhm.
or soca?
Gee whiz. Okay. It depends. There is no clear-cut choice. Because there are times where you just want to immerse yourself in the history, in the culture as it originated. And at that point, it's definitely a calypso where you could hear the history, the politics, the everything, the cultural nuances rolled into music, the use of the double entendre for your brain to keep clicking and figure out, is he talking about a hat or is he talking about something else? And then I would say the soca for when you just want to have that reckless abandon, that celebration, that joyful feeling. You, oh, that's also an awkward position. I can't choose one, but it all depends on the mood, is what I will say.
True, Trini. And last one, would you say punch crema for Christmas or sorrel?
What is with these trick questions?
I
Okay,
know, you have to
so
decide. You have to pick one.
I have to pick one.
Yeah, you got to pick one.
Okay, I will say sorrel. And I'm saying sorrel because sorrel could either be light and refreshing, or you could add a little something extra to it to give it a nice kick.
All
So,
right.
whereas with Pontchacrime, you can't
Yeah.
take the kick out of it. It is what it is.
All right. Okay. Good answer. But
Okay.
see, my thing is my dad always made the sorrel way too sweet. And so I have this just memory
Okay.
of like it just being a little too
Too
overbearing.
sweet.
So
Yes.
yeah, I've never done it myself. I'm sure I should probably try.
Oh, you
Very
should
simple.
probably try.
Yeah.
Yes.
Anyway, so thank you. It was such a pleasure. I want to ask you to share with our listeners if they want to follow along, where can they find you?
Oh, okay, so I am on LinkedIn. So just search me, Analisa Allen, and I'm right there.
Wonderful. Well, Analisa, this has been so much fun.
Wonderful trip down memory lane. Thank you for having me.